Hey guys, tonight we drift back thousands of years to the dry, humming silence of ancient Egypt. The air is thick with heat and incense, the kind that clings to your nose and doesn't quite let go. Palm fronds sway slowly under the weight of the Nile breeze, and somewhere in the distance you hear the plunk of a reed boat against a muddy bank. The sun, heavy and unblinking, slides low behind a temple wall as priests chant in voices half lost to time. You're standing in the courtyard of a grand shrine dedicated to Ptah, god of craftsmen and creation. The walls around you are carved with gods who have falcon heads, ibis heads, crocodile heads. Basically, if it had a head in Egypt, someone worshipped it. You're wearing linen, it itches. Your sandals are made of papyrus and were not made for walking. But you're here for something important, something sacred, something very weird. Your job, friend, is to lick a statue. Yep, that's your whole job. You're a temple servant, technically an image cleaner. You spend hours each day preparing for this ritual, purifying yourself in cold, sometimes gross water, abstaining from garlic, it's apparently unholy, and whispering prayers in Old Egyptian you mostly mumble through. And then when it's time, you go to the holy statue. Not just any statue, the statue, crafted from gold, lapis lazuli, and dark sycamore wood, a god's stand-in, and you lick it. It's said that the statue absorbs cosmic energy, divine breath, sacred power, and your tongue, somehow, helps transfer that energy into the world. It's spiritual, it's prestigious, it's deeply awkward. But in Egypt, everything is layered in ritual. Every motion means something. Every uncomfortable, strange, inexplicable practice has a purpose. That said, the statue sits in a dark, windowless shrine in a 105-degree room with no airflow. You're dehydrated, your knees hurt, and yes, if you were dropped into this society right now, with no context or training, you probably wouldn't survive this job past breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the time where you're watching this. It's always cool to see where we're all falling asleep from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the temple proper, and it swallows you in silence. Stone columns stretch up like tree trunks, painted with lotus blossoms and cryptic spells. Every surface is covered in hieroglyphs, silent, watchful words frozen in time. You walk past other servants, some carrying offerings of beer and honey cakes, others fanning the air with palm leaves. You nod to them like a regular, because in this world you are. You step carefully across the cool stone floor, each footfall echoing faintly beneath the soaring ceiling. It smells of myrrh, and something older, something musty and sacred, like the inside of a sealed tomb or the back of a priest's closet. The shadows are thick here. They gather around corners and stretch lazily across the frescoed walls like sleeping cats. You pass a colossal statue of Horus, his falcon eyes stern and unblinking. He stares straight through you, as if silently judging your worthiness or your last meal. Nearby, a scribe scratches notes onto a strip of papyrus with a reed pen, muttering to himself about the lunar calendar and a missing goat. You choose not to ask. At last you reach the antechamber. Quiet, enclosed, warmer than outside, somehow. The room is small and square, lined with smooth alabaster. It glows faintly, catching the light from oil lamps whose flames dance nervously with each shift of air. In the center of the room, behind a curtain of gold-threaded linen, rests the object of your devotion, the sacred cult statue. It's not large, maybe the height of your torso, but it carries the weight of centuries. It's carved with near-fanatical care, inlaid with precious stones and brushed with sacred oils. Its expression is serene and distant, like it knows something you don't, and probably never will. This isn't just a statue. This is the Ka, the living essence of the god. You are not just cleaning it, you are tending to a divine body. You kneel slowly, trying not to let your knees crack too loudly. You lower your head. You whisper the prescribed words, the ones drilled into your memory over weeks of monotonous temple training. O Great One, who shines in gold, who sits upon lapis, I come to you with the tongue of the pure, which is, by the way, a pretty lofty way of saying, I'm about to lick your foot. Because yes, you start at the feet. That's temple protocol. First, a light wipe with a cloth soaked in sacred natron water, smells vaguely like baking soda and heartbreak. Then a delicate polish with soft wool. And finally, the lick, a ritual gesture, symbolic of purification, of connection. Your tongue grazes the statue's foot, and you try not to think about how many other tongues have been here, how long the statue's been standing in the desert heat, how it definitely wasn't wiped down during the drought last month. Still, the ritual must be completed. You press your forehead to the floor. You recite more phrases. The priest watching you nods in solemn approval, though you can see the hint of a smirk in his sun-lined face. He's done this too. Everyone in the inner circle has. You're not just a worker, you're a vessel, a middleman between the human world and the gods. And that means doing strange, uncomfortable, tongue-related things without complaint. After the statue is cleaned, you carry the incense burner in a wide circle, smoke billowing up in slow spirals, thickening the already dense air. Your nose twitches, your stomach grumbles. You've been fasting since dawn, and the honeycakes from earlier are now off limits. Offerings, not snacks. You learned that the hard way your first week here. Outside, the sun is beginning to sink into the Nile. Inside, the shadows deepen, stretching long fingers across the walls. You feel them settle against your skin like warm silk. A bell rings in the distance, a low hollow tone that signals the evening rite is nearly complete. Your duties aren't done just yet though. There's still the recitation of the opening of the mouth spell, followed by the awkward business of feeding the statue. Yes, feeding. You'll be hand-placing tiny morsels of bread into the statue's eternal silence. It's less of a meal, more of a symbolic gesture, something to nourish the spirit. But there's something oddly touching about it. You, in this moment, are someone. Not a scribe, not a noble, not a king, just a cleaner, a caretaker. But you're also part of a sacred machine that's older than most mountains. You belong to the temple, to history, to the strange, deeply human instinct to give the divine a bath and a snack. And like everyone else here, you take your role seriously because if you don't, the god might get cranky. And in ancient Egypt, a cranky god meant plagues, floods, or maybe just a particularly bad harvest. You place the final piece of ritual bread in front of the statue. You bow again. As you rise from your final bow, the air in the chamber seems to still. The incense hangs like fog, and the low murmur of priests reciting closing prayers vibrates softly in your bones. You take a moment, letting your breathing match the rhythm of the flickering oil lamps, slow, intentional, like everything in this place. Behind you, the priest in charge, an older man with eyebrows like broom bristles, and the posture of someone who's permanently unimpressed, gives a small grunt. That's your cue. You gather the tools, a gold-plated basin, the wool cloths, the shallow bowl of natron solution, and the half-empty incense cone smoldering with frankincense. Nothing is to be wasted, not even the ash. You move in silence, careful not to disrupt the mood. This is one of the core rules drilled into every temple worker. Never break the illusion. To the outside world, this is sacred. To you, even though you know where the moths gather in the curtain folds, and which statue has a suspicious crack in its base, it still has to feel sacred. You step back through the antechamber, into the main hall. The shift in temperature hits you instantly. Cooler, somehow, despite the setting sun outside. Evening light filters through a slit in the ceiling, casting gold across the flagstone floor. It catches the motes of dust in the air, making them look like tiny glowing insects lazily floating through a divine dream. A few feet away, a line of novice workers is quietly waiting to begin their part of the ritual, the statue's bedtime routine. You're not joking. The god doesn't just get cleaned and fed, it gets tucked in. Every evening, the cult statue is gently wrapped in layers of fresh linen, anointed again with oil, and placed inside a sealed shrine chamber. The doors are shut, the bolts drawn. No one speaks of what happens inside after that. That room belongs to the god alone. You hand off your supplies to the youngest novice, a nervous kid, whose shaved head is slick with sweat. He bows so fast his forehead nearly hits your knee. You give him a nod of encouragement and walk away, your part done for now. As you make your way through the temple's inner passages, the sounds of the city beyond begin to trickle in. Distant drums, a cartwheel creaking, the shriek of an ibis, dramatic and unnecessarily personal. Life continues beyond the walls. But inside here, time is syrup thick and slow. Days blend into each other in a quiet rhythm of ritual, repetition and rest. You reach your sleeping quarters, which are surprisingly humble. A mat, a folded linen pillow that's more wood than cushion, a water jug that has seen better days. You sit, stretch your legs, roll your shoulders. You let out a sigh that feels like it's been building for hours. Outside your narrow window, the stars are starting to come out. First one, then two, then a spill of glitter across the black silk of the sky. It's quiet now, peaceful, for all the absurdity of your day. Licking divine statues, feeding symbolic meals to stone gods, you feel a strange sense of calm. Because here, in this strange role in this ancient place, you belong to something bigger than yourself. Something old and oddly comforting in its routines. You don't question it much anymore. Not because you're devout, though maybe you are, a little, but because there's something soothing about predictability, about sacred silliness, about knowing exactly where your tongue goes in a divine foot-polishing schedule. And maybe, just maybe, you've even grown fond of it. You lie back on the mat, arms crossed behind your head, staring up at the uneven ceiling. The air smells faintly of pressed linen and old incense, and from somewhere down the corridor, you hear the rhythmic sweep of a broom, one of the night cleaners beginning their shift. It's a comforting sound, predictable. The temple never truly sleeps, it just shifts gears. Your eyelids grow heavy, but sleep doesn't come just yet. Your mind wanders backward. You start to think about how you got here. You weren't born into a noble family, that much is certain. Your parents were grain counters in a village so small it didn't even have its own well, just a muddy depression that pretended to be one half the year. Your father got you into the temple through a favor, probably involving goats, or lentils, something transactional. You didn't ask, but once you arrived in Memphis, everything changed. The temple was another world. There were rules for how to stand, rules for how to speak, rules for folding linen, holding a spoon, even for how to breathe near a sacred flame.
You once got a 3-day punishment for sneezing during a morning chant. 3 days copying lists of gods onto papyrus, until your fingers cramped and your inkpot dried out. You never sneezed again, not without permission. Still, the temple offered something village life never could: structure, a strange kind of order. And for someone like you, who used to get overwhelmed just trying to choose between goat cheese and salted fish, that structure was a gift. The rituals were always the same. The prayers never changed. The gods didn't move the goalposts. And even if your job was strange, particularly tongue-involved, let's be honest, it was yours. You became good at it. You learned the exact pressure to apply when polishing gilded wood. You mastered the art of not blinking too fast in the presence of high priests. You developed calluses in places most people don't talk about. Eventually, they let you into the inner sanctum. That was a big moment. Not just anyone got to stand that close to the divine. You felt it the first time, the weight in the air, like the room itself was holding its breath. And you, a village nobody, were trusted to keep the statue clean, fed, clothed, and yes, occasionally licked. You close your eyes, letting the memories pass like papyrus boats drifting down the Nile. You think about the strange serenity of your routine, how even the bizarre parts have become second nature, how the line between the sacred and the absurd has grown so thin it no longer matters, and you wonder for a brief dreamy moment what the god thinks of all this, if it thinks at all, if it feels the touch of your wool cloth, if it notices your whispered prayers, your careful attention to foot polish consistency. You suspect it doesn't, or maybe it does, but not in any way you'd understand. Either way, the statue is always there, watching, waiting, silent, golden. Just before sleep pulls you under, there's a final familiar sound, the dull thunk of the temple doors being bolted shut for the night. And with that you let yourself drift, held by the same silence that has blanketed these stone halls for over 1,000 years. The night wraps around the temple like a well-worn cloak, heavy, familiar, humming softly with the breath of ancient walls. The air cools just enough for your skin to stop shimmering with sweat, and the stars outside your small window begin to pulse brighter against the deep obsidian of the desert sky. You don't dream, not really, or if you do, it's the kind of dream that feels more like memory. You're walking through columns taller than any palm tree you've ever seen. You pass under enormous lintels carved with names of kings long dead, their legacy etched in symbols so sacred no one dares alter a single curve of ink. In the dream, the temple is empty. No priests, no novices, no watchers, just you. You hear the whisper of feathers behind you, not footsteps, feathers. You turn, slowly, and see nothing, just shadows, and the faint flicker of torchlight that seems to move on its own. Then the golden statue is in front of you again, somehow taller now, impossibly tall. It looks down at you, not unkindly, but not warmly either. The expression is the same as always, distant, powerful, serene, a face carved by someone who believed that the divine should never be too familiar. You feel your mouth move. Words tumble out in a language you barely recognize, but your tongue knows it, like muscle memory from a past life. You chant, you bow, you kneel, you perform the motions exactly as you've been taught. The statue watches, unmoving, ever present, and then you lick it again, not because you want to, not because anyone told you to, but because it's what's done. It's what has always been done. You place your tongue gently against the divine ankle. You hold for 1 heartbeat, 2, then suddenly you wake up. You're back in your quarters, the wooden pillow presses into your neck, the thin sheet of linen tangled around your legs. For a moment you don't know if you actually licked the statue again, or just dreamed it. It's getting harder to tell the difference. A muffled knock sounds at your door, 3 short taps. You groan and sit up. It's still dark, too early for morning chants. You throw on your temple robe, and open the door. It's the novice again. Same kid as yesterday. His wide eyes blink at you through the gloom. Master Neshi says the statue must be redressed. The linen wrap tore during night prayers. He says you're the only one allowed to enter the chamber right now. You stare at the boy, then past him, toward the long corridor of columns stretching into the depths of the temple. It's silent, save for a few rustling palms outside. You sigh, deeply, then nod, because this too is part of it. The late night summons, the unexpected rituals, the little emergencies no one speaks of later. You grab your toolkit, cloths, oils, and a fresh linen shroud, and walk barefoot down the echoing halls, your steps loud against the polished stone. The lamps flicker more urgently now, casting wild, dancing shadows on the walls as if the gods themselves are shifting in their sleep. You reach the chamber, the same one you cleaned earlier, but now it feels different, quieter. The air is denser somehow, heavy with stillness. You slide open the inner door and step inside. The statue is waiting, still wrapped, but the linen is indeed torn, split right across the chest, exposing part of the carved torso beneath. That's not ideal. The gods don't like indecency, even accidental. You move quickly, respectfully. You unwrap the damaged linen, fold it just so, and set it aside. You retrieve the new cloth and begin the careful rewrapping process, working in practiced spirals from shoulder to feet. You murmur the required words with each turn, and as you do, the room begins to feel warmer. Just a touch, not enough to panic, but enough for the sweat to bead again at your temples. You don't stop. You finish the wrap. You seal it with the tie. You give the final bow. Then, on impulse, or maybe just ritual memory, you press your fingers lightly to the statue's foot. And then, one final, almost imperceptible gesture, a soft tap of your tongue against the edge of the golden toe. Why? You're not sure. The manual didn't say to do that, not this time. But something about it felt right, or at least necessary. You leave the chamber in silence. The statue says nothing, of course. It never does. But as you walk back to your quarters, the cool of the hallway slowly returning to your skin, you wonder again if it notices, if it remembers, and in a strange, sleep-starved way, you hope it does. By the time you return to your quarters, the eastern horizon is starting to smear with the faintest hint of dawn, just a whisper of lavender and copper behind the silhouette of the city's rooftop altars and swaying palms. You know you have only a short window before the temple's inner bells toll, and the ritual machine grinds back to life. Still, you lie down, pressing your face into the creased linen of your mat. The room is warm, close, and dim, and you close your eyes in the hope that sleep might find you again before the day officially begins. But it doesn't. Not really. Instead, your mind starts rolling back over what just happened. The midnight summons, the linen tear, the way the air felt too thick in the statue room, and that soft, automatic impulse, your tongue brushing the divine foot without instruction, without ceremony. It's not fear you feel, not exactly, but a kind of buzzing curiosity, a weight that sits just beneath your ribs. No one tells you what to do when you feel something during a ritual. They only teach you the steps, the words, the cloth folds and incense timing. No one says what should you do when it feels like the statue is watching you, or what if the silence in the chamber feels personal. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's exhaustion, but the sense lingers that somehow in the long history of caretakers and whispered chants, you've slipped a toe over the line between servant and something else. You stretch your fingers and stare at the ceiling again. There's a crack running across one corner like a tiny lightning bolt. One of the novices claims it's shaped exactly like the Nile. You don't see it. A temple bell rings, soft and low. That's the first call, the signal that the gates will open soon and the outer courtyard must be swept. You rise slowly. Your joints crack like old doors. You splash water from your jug onto your face, the cold hitting like a small slap. It wakes you enough to put on your outer robe. It's stiff from heat and repeated washing, and it smells vaguely of oil and dust, the cologne of every temple worker since before the pyramids had doors. As you step into the hallway, the corridor is already beginning to stir. A few other temple staff shuffle sleepily in their robes, eyes half-lidded, mouths chewing last night's silence. The older priests are always composed, always statuesque. The novices move quickly, trying too hard, always slightly panicked. You're somewhere in the middle. Your first task of the morning isn't glamorous, scraping incense residue from bronze trays. The resin turns tar black after burning, and if it's not cleaned properly, the next ceremony will smell like scorched beetles and regret. You kneel beside the altar trays, scraping carefully with a flat-bladed tool made from polished horn. It's tedious work, and your wrists ache after only a few minutes, but there's something meditative about it too. Scrape, wipe, polish, repeat. You imagine how many hands have done this before you. Hundreds, thousands, maybe more. You wonder if they too ever found themselves waking in the night, summoned by damaged linen or strange dreams. You wonder if any of them ever dared to speak about it. Spoiler, they didn't. Temple workers are trained to notice everything and say nothing. The silence is part of the system, just like the incense, just like the bells, just like the statue. By the time you finish, the sun has begun spilling light across the temple's outer walls. Birds shriek overhead, ibises, again dramatic as ever. The city beyond the gates is stirring too, vendors setting up carts, wheels creaking, the scent of bread already drifting in on a breeze that feels impossibly soft. You allow yourself a breath. A long one, the kind of breath that presses into your chest and spreads out through your fingers. Then you rise, tuck away the clean trays, and make your way to the inner sanctuary, because now it's time for the real work to begin. The god must be awakened, and guess whose job it is to handle that? Yep, it's you. Again, you make your way toward the sanctuary. Barefoot as always, your steps soft against the polished sandstone. The corridor grows darker the deeper you go, the outer light slowly retreating behind you. The warm dawn air gives way to a cool hush that lives permanently in this part of the temple, as though time has curled up in the corners and decided to nap there forever. No one walks with you. That's not unusual. Awakening the god is a solo act, too sacred to be seen, too ridiculous to be shared. You've never quite decided which part is more true. You reach the doors of the inner sanctum, thick cedar-scented, inlaid with gold leaf, and carved with lotus blossoms that have been resanded and repainted so many times, their petals now look slightly melted. Two guardian priests flank the doors, both expressionless and still as statues themselves. They give a single nod when you approach. No words are exchanged. That's the rule. One priest slowly pulls the bolt. The other gently presses the door open. It groans, low and long, a sound that's felt more in your sternum than your ears. And there it is, the inner chamber, cloaked in shadows, glowing faintly with the last embers of last night's incense. You step inside. The doors close behind you with a thud that feels final, like a book slamming shut. You're alone, again. The statue sits where it always does, on its gilded pedestal in the center of the room, wrapped in the fresh linen you tied only hours ago. The air smells like crushed myrrh, sandalwood and thyme. The ritual begins. First the awakening chant. You kneel, light the oil lamp beside the altar, and begin murmuring the ancient words, not loudly, not even fully aloud, just enough to stir the air, just enough for the god to hear, or to pretend to. O golden one, rise from sacred sleep, for the sun has touched the world once more. The earth opens her eyes, and so must you. You chant slowly, almost lazily, like you're coaxing a friend from deep slumber. That's how it's supposed to feel. The god isn't startled awake, the god is gently nudged into awareness, as though drifting from a perfect dream. Then comes the unwrapping. You step forward, carefully pulling the linen from the statue's torso. It's not a full undressing, just enough to let the god breathe, as the priests say. You fold the linen neatly, place it beside the altar, and whisper another invocation under your breath. Next is the face washing. You dip your fingers into the ceremonial water stored in a squat alabaster jar with a chip no one dares repair, and gently press the damp cloth against the statue's cheeks, brow and chin. The gold leaf glints slightly under the lamplight, catching the shimmer of the water in little trails. You're not cleaning so much as performing the idea of cleaning, a symbolic refresh for a being that never sweats, never blinks, never moves. Still, you're careful. You always are. You've seen what happens when someone's too rough with the statue. The incident with the chipped nose, barely visible mind you, cost that temple worker an entire month of silent duties, copying scrolls alone in a chamber with no windows. He still winces when he hears the word papyrus. The final step, the anointing. You take the smallest dab of perfumed oil, sweet with lotus, sharp with resin, and press it gently onto the statue's forehead, then each shoulder, then both feet. You pause for just a second longer on the feet. It's involuntary now, like your body remembers the late night ritual better than your mind does, and just like that, the god is awake, or pretends to be. You step back, bow slowly and whisper the final phrase. Your presence returns like the sun, ever shining, ever golden. It's theatrical, it's repetitive, but there's something soothing about it all. The repetition, the weight of it, the sense that you are merely one bead on a necklace of caretakers, stretching back thousands of years. You are not the first, you won't be the last, but for now, you are the one keeping the god clean, clothed, and slightly moisturized. You look up at the statue, studying it for a moment. It's lifeless, glorious, comforting even, but there's something about the tilt of its head today, probably your imagination, that seems alert. You shake the thought loose and collect your tools. As you walk out, the chamber feels just a degree warmer than it did before. That could be the lamp, could be your body heat, could be something else entirely. You step back into the corridor, the door closing behind you like the ceiling of a tomb, and just like that, another day begins.
You return to the outer temple chambers, greeted by the soft chorus of daily sounds coming alive, linen robes rustling, small bells tinkling, as novices shuffle past carrying trays of pomegranate wine and honeyed bread for the morning offerings. Somewhere nearby, a priest begins to drone the first recitation of the day's omens, and a cat slinks between two carved columns like it owns the place. It probably does. You pause just for a moment in the sunlit courtyard to stretch your back, eyes half closed as golden light warms your face. The stone beneath your feet is still cool, though you know it won't stay that way for long. Within the hour, the heat will rise, heavy and sticky, and the scent of incense and body oil will merge into that familiar temple musk, a mix of sacred and sweaty that clings to everything, including your nostrils. You're scheduled next for scroll duty, which sounds more noble than it actually is. You won't be studying philosophy or deciphering celestial maps. No, your scroll duty involves sitting cross-legged on a reed mat with a stylus in one hand, transcribing grain inventory logs from a tattered master sheet that may or may not be smeared with what you hope is fig paste. It's the kind of task that numbs the fingertips and hollows the brain, but it's important. Without accurate logs, someone ends up with spoiled barley and everyone gets blamed except the guy who miswrote 3 sacks as 30. That guy's now reassigned to goat patrol. You're determined not to join him. You settle onto the mat, the dry fibers poking into your legs. The scribe beside you offers a weary nod, a mutual understanding between two people about to stare at ancient grocery lists for the next 3 hours. The papyrus crinkles as you unroll it, and you dip your stylus in ink with the sort of grim reverence usually reserved for surgeries or bad dates. Temple of the Great Radiant One, the scroll begins, in the usual florid script. Grain log, month of Shemu, day 12. You murmur the words quietly to yourself as you begin copying them onto the fresh scroll. Each line is a record of movement. Sacks of wheat arriving from Nubia, jars of beer distributed to workers, shipments of lentils delayed due to crocodile activity. You pause at that one. It's written plainly. 2 days late, river unsafe, crocodiles. No explanation, no elaboration, just crocodiles. As if that's all the information anyone needs. And honestly, it is. After a while, your hand cramps, but you keep going. There's something weirdly soothing about the task. The scratch of stylus on papyrus, the predictable pattern of entries. It's like entering a trance. Your mind begins to wander, moving back to the statue. The midnight visit, the linen, that strange warmth in the chamber that didn't come from the lamp. You wonder if you're reading too much into it. Priests talk about visions all the time. Divine dreams, whispered voices, celestial signs. But you've always suspected most of them were just very elaborate ways to excuse naps. You, on the other hand, are not prone to that kind of drama. And yet, you can't shake the feeling that something has shifted. Slightly, quietly. Like the moment just before the first raindrop hits your shoulder. You don't see it, but you feel it, prickling just beneath the surface. You glance up and catch a glimpse of the temple courtyard beyond the columns. The sun is now fully risen, casting long, sharp shadows. A group of novice girls is singing as they scrub the outer walkway, their voices rising and falling like birdsong, the lyrics half-sacred hymn, half-nonsense rhyme about papyrus stains and missing sandals. Back to the scroll. 10 measures of barley, 6 to the eastern granary, 4 to the bakery. You read aloud, jotting it down. You resist the urge to doodle a tiny crocodile in the margin. Barely. Suddenly, a commotion echoes from across the courtyard, a clatter of sandals, the bark of a short, urgent command. And then silence. All eyes flick in the same direction. The sanctuary wing. You see a senior priest pacing briskly, clutching his robe awkwardly around him, muttering to a young attendant who looks like he's about to cry. You try not to stare. You really do. But everyone else is watching now too. The priest gestures sharply, impatiently, and the boy bolts toward the storage corridor, disappearing into the gloom. Something's wrong. You feel it before anyone says it, but of course no one does say it. Not aloud, not in the temple. The golden rule here is that if something strange happens in the sanctuary, you don't ask questions. You offer incense. You keep your head down. You lick the foot if necessary. Still, you fold your scroll and quietly excuse yourself. You tell the scribe you need to return a stylus. He nods absently. Everyone is pretending not to notice the ripples in the usual morning rhythm. You walk slowly down the side corridor, your thoughts racing at a much faster pace. What would cause a senior priest to break formation like that? Could it be damage? Theft? Some animal intrusion? That happened once. A monkey managed to steal a sacrificial chicken mid-ritual, and then sat on the altar eating it like a snack. Chaos. Literal feathers everywhere. But no one's panicking. There's just tension. Controlled, precise tension. Which, in the temple, is always worse than panic. And through it all, you keep thinking about the statue, the warmth in the chamber, the impulse to touch it, the dreams. You reach the edge of the sanctuary wing, but pause before turning the corner. You're not scheduled to return there until evening. You shouldn't be here. But something, curiosity, instinct, or just the unbearable pull of not knowing, tugs at you. You hover near the edge of the corridor, just beyond the arch that leads to the sanctuary wing. The sandstone wall is cool beneath your fingertips, and for a moment you rest your hand there, grounding yourself, like you might actually be able to root your nerves into the stone and convince them to stay put. Voices drift down the hall, low, clipped, the kind of hurried hush reserved for problems that absolutely should not be problems. You can't hear the words, just the rhythm, phrases cut short, the shuffle of sandals, something being dragged, a soft, breathy curse. You shift your weight, unsure whether to step forward or turn around and resume your life as a law-abiding scroll copier with no ambitions and no cursed linen memories. But your feet betray you, they always do. You slide forward, inch by inch, keeping close to the wall. You pass the chamber of offerings, its doorway open, revealing rows of fruit bowls arranged just so, and then the hallway narrows. You pause beside a small alcove, one used to store oil jugs and cracked statues no one quite knows what to do with. It offers decent cover. You duck into it, crouching just enough to hide in shadow, and peer around the corner. You see them now. 3 figures gathered in a loose semicircle, around something on the ground, something you can't quite see. One is the high officiant. His hair is covered, even indoors, and his gold medallion glints with every sharp gesture. Beside him is an elder priest, you recognize but rarely speak to, and a third figure, unmistakably a courier, given the way he's hunched and sweating, as if he'd sprinted the entire route from the outer temples. There's linen on the floor, torn, a trail of it, actually, leading from the main chamber to where they stand now. A broken oil jar lies on its side nearby, its contents slicking the floor in a slow, deliberate puddle. None of them are speaking anymore. They just stand there, breathing, watching something just out of view, their bodies rigid with the kind of stillness that always comes after something unplanned has happened. You lean in a little further, and that's when you see it. At first it's just the foot, the statue's foot, but it's in the wrong place. You blink hard. Once, twice, nope, it's still there. The left foot of the god, normally perched above the altar on its fixed pedestal, is lying several feet away from the dais, nestled awkwardly in a smear of spilled oil and torn linen. That doesn't happen. Statues don't fall apart in this temple, especially not that one. That statue has been in place longer than some cities. It survived fires, floods, regime changes, and at least 2 earthquakes.
and yet there it is, the god's golden left foot, separated from the body like a misplaced sandal, just sitting there. You draw back, heart thudding, not because of fear exactly, but because of consequence. Nothing about this is allowed. Statues are divine bodies, not sculptures. They are inhabited. Cracking one is like breaking a royal tomb, or writing poetry in a tax ledger. Even if it's an accident, it's sacrilege, which means someone is about to be blamed, thoroughly. And if your linen tear last night was the beginning of this, you push that thought away before it can bloom. You stay in the alcove, as the priests begin whispering again. Urgent. Quick. They're talking about restoration, about sealing the wing, about fasting rites and ritual cleansing. You catch fragments. Never in all my years. Blame the humidity. Quietly. Can't risk the public finding out. Must reconsecrate the chamber. And then a quiet gasp from the courier, who seems to have noticed something no one else has. Where's the linen from last night, he says. The elder priest stiffens. What do you mean? The one wrapped before sunset. It's gone. A pause. I saw it, he insists. It was there when I closed the chamber. I remember. It had that pattern, the falcon feather stitch. Another pause. This one longer. The officiant slowly turns his head toward the trail of torn linen leading across the floor. Your breath catches, because you wrapped that linen. That was your pattern. You crouch lower, wishing yourself invisible. Silent. One with the jars. You are a jug now. You contain oil and 0 secrets. The priests move toward the statue, blocking your view again. A flurry of soft commands follows. Someone is being sent to fetch the master sculptor, another to wake the dream seer. The energy shifts from confusion to containment. The priests are very good at this. Problems don't happen. If they do, they are quietly renamed and ritualized into something official sounding. This is not a disaster. This is a moment of divine adjustment. Classic. You wait until their voices fade back toward the inner chamber, then slowly peel yourself from the alcove wall. Your knees crack. Your sandals scrape. You feel like a ghost and an accomplice. As you retrace your steps toward the courtyard, your thoughts race. You didn't break the statue, but something about that linen, about that moment in the dark, about how the foot had been warm. You know there's more to this than what's being said, and for better or worse, you're already woven into it. You walk back toward the main hall slowly, deliberately, as if dragging the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions behind you. The corridor is quiet now, unnaturally so. Even the temple cat, usually meowing for scraps by this hour, seems to have disappeared, as if sensing that something bigger than mice and milk is at play. You pass beneath one of the high lintels, carved with rows of protective spells and little winged beetles, symbols meant to guard the temple against chaos, evil, and the occasional tax audit. The sun slants in through a row of clerestory windows, and for a moment the light looks like gold leaf shaken loose from a sacred book. It makes you feel smaller than usual, which is impressive, because lately you've been feeling pretty small. You replay everything, again, the midnight ritual, the linen, the dream, the warmth, the missing foot, and that courier's words, how he remembered the falcon feather stitch, your signature pattern. Not because it was beautiful, it wasn't, but because it was weird. You don't stitch like the others. Your hand is steady, but your loops are a little too tight, your rows a little uneven. It's barely noticeable, unless you're staring at it in torchlight, which apparently, someone was. You wonder if the god noticed too. You shake the thought away, but not fast enough. You're not supposed to wonder if the god notices anything. You're supposed to serve. You're supposed to wrap, wash, anoint, and chant. You're supposed to believe, but not in a messy, personal way, more in the order of the universe kind of way, like you believe in rivers, or seasons, or taxes. But today feels different. There's a disturbance humming under the floor, a shift in the script. You've seen a lot of rituals in your years here. Birth rites, funerals, harvest blessings, the infamous cursed fig exorcism. Don't ask, but never this. Never a statue breaking apart like a tired old puppet. You reach the scribe chamber again. The scroll you abandoned still sits on the mat, your stylus balanced across the top like a seesaw. The senior scribe has taken your place, silently finishing your lines without so much as a glance in your direction. You consider resuming the work. You really do, but something pulls at you, low in the gut, a kind of silent tether dragging your mind back toward the sanctuary. You need answers, and not the official kind printed on temple tablets in triplicate. You need the unspoken kind, the kind whispered by those who know things they aren't supposed to. You rise from the mat, not too quickly, just enough to seem casual, and you slip away again, this time toward the outer servants' wing. That's where the real talk happens. The servants' wing smells like onions, sweat, and the slightly sour tang of lentil mash. It's not glamorous, it's also not sacred, which means it's the only part of the temple where people actually tell the truth. The novices here don't speak in invocations, they swear, gossip, and hum tuneless songs while peeling garlic. They also see everything. Temple secrets pass through this wing like water through reeds. You pass the kitchen first, where a girl no older than 12 is arguing with a pot about whether or not the barley is cursed. It isn't, probably. Then you reach your target, the washing chamber. Inside, linens hang from thick ropes overhead, drying in the heat. The air smells of lime, starch, and temple soap, which is just powdered clay mixed with wild mint and judgment. A worker you know, Aset, is folding strips of fabric with mechanical grace. She's younger than you, but twice as observant. Nothing escapes her. You clear your throat. She glances up, frowns slightly, then keeps folding. You wait. She speaks first. You're supposed to be on scroll duty. Had to. Retrieve something. You say. You shift awkwardly. She stops folding, and eyes you. You're a bad liar. I didn't lie, you say. I just didn't elaborate. That earns a tiny smirk. What do you know about the sanctuary this morning? You ask. Arsette doesn't answer immediately. She picks up a long length of linen and begins inspecting the hem for damage. Why would I know anything? I wasn't there. You were here when the courier ran in. You saw who he talked to. You saw what they were carrying out. She tilts her head. What exactly are you looking for? You hesitate. Then, the foot, from the statue. That gets her attention. She sets the linen down, very gently, like it's suddenly full of bees. I didn't see it, she says slowly, but someone came through carrying something under a black cloth. Big, heavy. They nearly dropped it on the stairs. Which stairs? The archive ones, not the main ones. The back route, the one no one uses unless they're hiding something. You feel a cold thread slip down your spine. They're taking it to the archive vault, you whisper. Maybe, Arsette says, or maybe somewhere worse. You frown. What's worse than the vault? She shrugs, but her eyes don't leave yours. Places that don't exist on temple maps. A silence hangs between you, dense and crackling. Then she adds, almost too casually, you should talk to Menek. He saw something last night, didn't sleep, said he heard voices in the chamber after it was locked. Your heart does a small, inappropriate cartwheel. Where is he now? Where do you think? She replies, sleeping. He's on incense duty tonight. Which chamber? She gestures lazily toward the novice quarters, third cot from the brazier, the one with the sandals tied together with papyrus string. You nod your thanks and turn to go. She calls after you. If you're going to ask questions, be careful who you ask them to. You glance back. Why? Arsette picks up the linen again. Because sometimes the gods do wake up, and sometimes they remember who touched them last. You walk briskly now, your sandals making a soft slap across the flagstones as you head toward the novice quarters. You're trying to seem relaxed, unhurried, but your pulse is tapping out a warning in your throat. Faster, faster. Every instinct tells you that this is a story that wants to stay buried. And yet you're digging. Arsette's words echo behind your eyes. Sometimes the gods do wake up, and sometimes they remember who touched them last. You exhale slowly through your nose. That's just superstition, right? The kind of thing people say to sound wise, like don't whistle at dusk, or never name a cat after a dead king. But deep down, something uncomfortable is blooming in your chest. You pass through the side colonnade, where the novices usually study, but this time of day it's empty, just wind rustling the papyrus scrolls left behind, and the occasional lazy buzz of a fly. You turn a corner and find yourself in the novice sleeping quarters. The air cooler here, shadowed by woven shades that filter the sun into soft checkerboard patterns. There are rows of low cots lined with straw-stuffed cushions and rolled mats. Some are empty, others occupied by snoring lumps of fabric that used to be teenagers. You count. 1, 2, 3. There it is, third cot from the brazier, and the sandals, just like Arsette said, tied with papyrus string, not exactly subtle. You step lightly over the scattered satchels and laundry bundles, and crouch beside the cot. Menek, you whisper. No response. Menek, you repeat, a bit louder. A groan emerges from the depths of the bedding, followed by a groggy, if this is about latrine duty, I swear on the Nile, I already did it. It's not, you say. I need to talk to you, about last night, the sanctuary. There's a pause, then, slowly, a blanket peels back, revealing a head of sleep-mussed curls, and one very bloodshot eye. You're not a priest, he mutters. Why do you care? I was in the sanctuary last night. I helped wrap the statue. His other eye opens. The linen. You nod. He sits up quickly, too quickly, and immediately regrets it. He winces, clutching his temple. Oh, okay, that explains it. Explains what? He stares at you like he's weighing something. Then quietly, he says, you felt it, didn't you? You nod again, slower this time. Menek swings his legs off the cot and leans forward, whispering now. I was supposed to lock up after the midnight shift. Everything was normal until about an hour after sundown. Then, I started hearing things. What kind of things? He glances around to make sure no one's listening. I thought it was just wind at first, he says, but it wasn't. It was chanting, really low, like someone was whispering the funeral rites but in reverse. And the air, it smelled like burned honey and salt, like a ritual, but wrong. You feel goosebumps bloom on your arms. Menek continues. I peeked through the outer curtain, just once. I swear I didn't go in, but I saw light, coming from the statue. You don't speak. You don't need to. Your face says it all. You saw it too, he says. You nod. I touched the linen. His eyes widen. And, he asks, I dreamed, you say softly, not like a normal dream. I saw something, walking through the reed marsh, something ancient. It looked human, but it wasn't. Its hands were blackened, like they'd been burned. It had no eyes. Menek's mouth is a tight line now. I dreamed of the river, he says, except it was dry. No water, just bones. Thousands of them, and one of them looked like me. A silence stretches between you. Not awkward, just full. Then Menek shakes his head. Something woke up last night. You know that, right? You whisper. I don't think it ever really slept. You both sit there for a while, watching dust motes drift in a sunbeam. Somewhere down the hall, someone drops a tray and curses, and the sound feels like a reminder that the world outside is still moving, even while yours feels like it's shifting. Finally, Menek speaks. They took the foot to the vault. That's where they put things they can't explain.
Broken charms, cursed idols, statues that start bleeding for no reason. It's sealed, but there's a vent shaft that leads in from the east wall. I saw the sculptor sneak through it once during an inspection. Your heart skips. Could I fit? He eyes you. If you don't eat lunch for the next 3 days, then show me. He hesitates. Are you sure? No, you admit. But I need to know what's going on. I think the god is unfinished. Or returning. Or maybe it's not a god at all. Menek swallows hard. If it's not a god, then what is it? You rise to your feet. That's what I'm going to find out. He pulls a tunic over his head, grumbling. You owe me a week of incense duty. Fine. You reply. If we live through this, I'll even polish your sandals. As you both head toward the east wing, you glance back once more toward the heart of the temple, where sunlight glints off distant columns. The god is waiting, or watching, or something far more complicated than either. The east wing is quieter than the rest of the temple. Not in the sacred, incense-hung kind of way, but in that heavy, forgotten kind of way. The corridors here are narrower, the paint on the walls faded, the carvings a little shallower. This isn't where ceremonies happen, it's where things are stored, boxed, ignored. It smells like dry reed mats and ancient wax. You and Menek move in silence, your steps muffled by dust. Occasionally you pass a door carved with an old family name, or a half-effaced seal. Some of the chambers back here haven't been opened in decades, and more than one is rumored to house things the temple doesn't exactly want remembered. Menek stops beside an unmarked doorway. No inscription, no guardian spell, just a blank wooden frame with a linen curtain that's gone stiff at the bottom from years of floor dust. Here, he whispers and nudges the curtain aside. You step in. The chamber beyond is more of a nook, really. No more than 8 feet wide. There's a toppled stool, a few cracked jars, and one lonely sculpture stand missing its statue. On the far wall, nestled beneath a crooked shelf of dried-out ink bricks, is a gap in the stone, only just wide enough to be called a vent shaft. You crouch, inspecting it. It's a slit of space no bigger than your shoulders. It snakes downward at an awkward angle, then disappears into darkness. Definitely not on any map. Menek crouches beside you. He used to slide through it with a rope tied to his ankle in case he got stuck. Comforting, you mutter.
Just don't breathe too deep. There's always spiders. You give him a look that says, I didn't need to know that. He shrugs. You suck in a breath, tuck your arms to your sides and begin to squeeze in. The stone is cold and unforgiving, scraping your elbows and hips as you worm your way forward inch by inch. It smells like old chalk and something vaguely metallic, a sharp scent, like rust or dried blood. You try not to dwell on that. Behind you, Menek mutters. You still want answers, and you say, no, I need them. The shaft seems to narrow and widen at random, forcing you to twist, slide, and inch your way down in a dance that's equal parts awkward and terrifying. More than once your foot slips and your body lurches forward, skin grazing the rock. At one point you have to suck in your stomach and pray you don't get stuck. Then finally, after what feels like hours but is probably less than 5 minutes, your hand touches air. You ease forward and tumble gracelessly onto a stone floor covered in chalk dust. You land on your hands and knees, coughing, and blink as your eyes adjust to the dim light. You're in a low chamber, vaulted and dry, with narrow slits high in the walls to let in faint beams of sunlight. It's cool here, and the silence is so complete it presses against your skin. This is the vault. At first glance it's just a storage room. There are shelves along the walls, stacked with papyrus bundles and sealed jars. You spot a ceremonial mask with a crack down its cheek, a crown of bronze thorns wrapped in red cloth, and a statue missing both arms but still bearing an uncanny smile. Then your eyes land on it. At the far end of the vault, beneath a shroud of black linen, is something shaped like a foot. You rise, slowly. Dust falls from your robes. The linen is wrapped hastily, not in the reverent, layered way that temple law requires. Whoever did this was panicked, or rushed, or both. You cross the chamber, heart thudding, and when you reach the cloth you pause. You don't uncover it yet, you just listen. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, a sound. A kind of slow rhythmic ticking like a heartbeat made of stone. You lean closer. It's not in your ears, it's not in your head, it's coming from the foot. You reach out, your hand hovers over the linen, trembling just slightly, and then you peel it back. The foot gleams beneath the cloth, not the matte, dust-covered gold you remember from the statue in the sanctuary, but a sharpened shine, like it's been polished from the inside. The severed edge doesn't look cracked or broken. It looks smooth, like it was sliced cleanly, or like it detached itself. Worse, the base is wrong. You expected to see pegs, or rods, or whatever passes for ancient statue ankle anatomy. Instead, there are symbols, carved into the underside of the foot. Symbols that writhe ever so slightly when you look at them too long. You flinch back. Not because it moves, because it wants to. That's the only way to describe it. The foot sits there, inert and still, and utterly inanimate, and yet you can feel it watching you. Not with eyes, with memory, like it remembers you from last night. Like it knows you were the one who touched it, wrapped it, woke it. You stagger back, chest tight. Then you hear a sound behind you. stone against stone. You whirl around. A door you didn't see before, carved into the wall, camouflaged by shadows, has just shifted slightly open. You hadn't touched it. Neither had Menik. And yet, there it is, open, waiting, as if inviting you in. You glance once more at the foot, then at the door, and knowing full well you should absolutely turn back, that you should crawl back up that vent shaft and pretend none of this ever happened, you take a step toward the open door, because deep down you know, this isn't about a statue anymore. The door breathes. That's the only word your brain can manage. A slow inhalation, stone dragging softly against stone, air displacing itself in the stillness of the vault. It's not dramatic. It's worse. It's subtle, careful, like something that's been waiting behind that threshold for centuries has just noticed you and decided to open its eyes. You take one hesitant step forward. The sound of your footfall echoes across the chamber, far too loud for comfort. You glance back at the vent shaft, now just a black slit in the wall. You could still crawl out. You could go back, pretend this was a fever dream, tell Menik it was dust hallucinations and temple mold, but of course you won't. Because now, something has changed. Because you need to see. You approach the door slowly, feeling the temperature shift. The air here is colder than the rest of the temple, but not dead. No, it moves, like breath on the back of your neck, carrying with it a scent that's hard to place. Not incense, not rot, something metallic, wet, familiar in a way that turns your stomach. You reach the doorway. It's no wider than your outstretched arms, carved roughly into the wall with no hieroglyphs, no protective seals, no warding lines or godly invocations. That in itself is unnerving. Every sacred space in the temple, even latrines, has some kind of mark to keep dark spirits out. But this was meant to be forgotten. You step inside. The chamber beyond is narrow and low-ceilinged. You have to duck slightly to avoid brushing your head on the rough stone above. The walls are smooth and damp, as if the room sweats in its sleep. The only light comes from narrow cracks in the ceiling, probably the same slits you noticed from above, casting fractured beams that ripple slightly, like water caught in a windless pool. The floor is stone, but it feels soft, somehow. You realize you're walking on a layer of old cloth, discarded wrappings, some silk, some linen, most so decayed they disintegrate beneath your steps. You feel a chill creep up your spine. You look down, and notice something else. There are footprints in the dust, some old, some fresh, some too fresh. You crouch and run your finger along one of them. The dust hasn't even resettled yet. Whoever made this mark was here moments ago, or is still here. The air thickens. You take another step. Something catches your eye. At the far end of the chamber, just barely illuminated by fractured light, sits a shape. It's large, squatting, covered in heavy cloth that's been bleached pale by time. You walk closer, slowly. Every instinct in your body screams at you to leave, but curiosity drags you forward like a rope around your chest. You reach the shape. A statue. No, not a statue, at least not just a statue. The figure beneath the cloth is far larger than any idol you've seen in this temple. 7 feet tall at least. Broad shoulders. Long limbs folded inward, arms resting on its knees in a strange, almost meditative position. The fabric doesn't conceal its presence. You can feel it radiating from the stone like a heat that doesn't warm, just warns. You reach out and gently lift a corner of the cloth, and freeze. The face beneath is incomplete, not broken, not unfinished, paused. Where the eyes should be, there are hollow sockets, but deeper than seems possible, pits that seem to descend into nothingness. The mouth is sculpted mid-expression, lips parted slightly, as if about to speak or whisper or scream. Its skin, if you can call the surface that, is smooth but too smooth, like it was poured, not carved, like it's waiting to harden. You back away slowly, suddenly aware of every sound your body makes. The statue does not move, but you feel something else now, a rhythm, not from the statue but from the walls, a low vibration, like distant drums, faint but growing, boom, 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 and behind the sound, something older, something slower, the faint rattle of ankhs shaking, the dry hiss of papyrus burning, the thud of wet sandals on temple stone. The past is coming. No, not coming, returning. You close your eyes and breathe through your nose, trying to stay calm, trying to focus, but then you feel it, a breath, not your own, on your face. You snap your eyes open. The statue hasn't moved, but the cloth is fluttering gently, though there's no breeze. You back away again, and that's when you see it. On the wall behind the statue, faint and almost imperceptible, is a carving. Unlike anything else in the temple, no Egyptian symbols, no sun discs or crocodile gods or lotus flowers, just a spiral, carved inward, over and over again. At the center, a dot, and beneath it, one word, not written in your language, not in any language you know, but somehow you understand it. Return. You stumble back, heart hammering, and from somewhere inside the walls, or maybe just inside your own skull, you hear a voice, not spoken, not heard, but known. I was never finished. The voice lingers in your mind, like dust in a shaft of light, fine, golden, clinging. You don't know if you heard it, or if the thought was planted,
But either way, it's there now, settled into your bones like a memory that was never yours. I was never finished. Your hands are trembling. You take one careful step back from the statue, eyes fixed on the spiral carving behind it. Your mouth is dry, and the room feels suddenly smaller, tighter. The air presses against your chest, and you realize something terrifying. The longer you look at the spiral, the more you feel your sense of direction twist, not spin, not sway, twist, like your mind is slowly corkscrewing inward, pulled toward the center dot, the eye of the symbol. You blink and turn your head quickly, breaking the gaze, and the sensation stops just as fast, but it lingers, a little off-kilter, a little too quiet. You glance back at the statue, that massive unfinished body cloaked in age and silence. You swear, its fingers weren't resting like that before. The left hand, it's slightly more curled, just enough that you wonder if you imagined the difference, just enough to keep your breath caught in your throat. You whisper, "Who made you?" The statue offers nothing, no movement, no voice, just waiting, and that's what terrifies you most. It's not threatening, it's patient, like it knows that eventually you'll ask the question that matters, that eventually you'll understand what it is, that eventually you'll help it become whatever it was meant to be. And standing there, in the cold half-light of that forgotten chamber, you feel a terrible truth crawl up your spine. Someone started to make a god, and stopped. But they didn't unmake it, didn't destroy it, just left it, half finished, half hungry, half waiting, and now here you are, pressing your soft human curiosity against something far too old and far too quiet. You circle the statue slowly, trying to keep your breath steady. On the back of its head, there's a mark, not carved but branded, like someone pressed a heated seal to the stone and left behind a black scorched ring. The edges are jagged, the mark is crude, almost desperate, like a warning left by someone who was running out of time. You touch it, a jolt flickers through your fingers, not heat, not cold, recognition, and in an instant you see, not in pictures, not in thoughts, in sensations, the smell of wet ash and blooming lotus, the sound of chanting backward, 1,000 footsteps in the sand, all walking in the same circle, a priest screaming behind sealed stone, a god with too many names, a temple no one built. You stagger back, gasping. This isn't just forgotten history, it's deliberately forgotten, erased, as if the memory of this thing was dangerous enough to bury in a vault and pray over until everyone who ever touched it was dust. And yet, here it is, still waiting. You back toward the entrance, but something's wrong. The door you came through, it's gone. No, not gone, just not there anymore. The wall is smooth, seamless, no crack, no frame, no vent shaft, just cold stone. You whirl around. The room is unchanged, the statue sits in its stillness, but now, the spiral on the wall is glowing, faint but unmistakable, a dull gold pulse, boom, 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 like a heartbeat. You reach out, hesitant, your hand hovering just over the spiral's center. You're not thinking clearly now, you're not thinking at all. It's like your body wants to touch it, like your bones remember something your mind doesn't, but before your fingers make contact, a sound, behind you, a footstep. You freeze, not yours, not imagined, stone, sandal, step. You turn around slowly, nothing there, the statue hasn't moved, but now the cloth that had covered it, it's gone, folded neatly at its base. You didn't touch it, you know you didn't, and then you see it, on the statue's chest, a faint crack, hairline thin, running right through the center, like the stone is splitting, from the inside. You back up slowly, hand instinctively reaching for a tool, a knife, a torch, anything, but of course you brought nothing. You came here seeking knowledge, not defense, and now, boom, 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 the spiral pulses faster. You don't know what to do, you don't know what you've started, but you whisper anyway, to no one, to it, to yourself, what do you want? And somewhere deep in the stone, beneath the spiral, beneath the floor, beneath the temple itself, you feel a reply, not words, just one overwhelming feeling, to be finished. You stand in the middle of the chamber, breath shallow, chest tight, eyes locked on the hairline crack cleaving the statue's chest. It's not just a fracture, it's an invitation, a line drawn not in weakness, but in intention, as if something behind it has been pushing, patiently, persistently, for a very long time. The spiral on the wall pulses again, once, twice, then fades to a dim golden ember, like it's watching your reaction, like it knows you've started to understand. This is not about a statue, this is not about history, this is about continuation, and you, it seems, have been cast as the finisher. You take a step back, but there's nowhere to go. The walls have shifted again, not closed in, not physically, but the chamber feels smaller, like the geometry is bending, slowly folding inward, turning space into a funnel that leads right here, to this spot, this moment, this figure waiting on its folded knees for its final chapter. You whisper, this can't be happening, but it is, and the silence doesn't argue. Then from behind you, a voice, but not the statue, not your own mind, a human voice, breathy, thin, faint. You shouldn't be here. You whirl around, heart hammering, eyes scanning the dim chamber, a figure, thin, cloaked in what looks like priestly robes, stands half-shrouded in shadow, near one of the far corners. You couldn't have missed him, but he wasn't there before, or maybe he was, and you simply weren't allowed to see him until now. Who are you? You demand. He doesn't answer. He only steps forward slightly, enough for you to see that his robe is ancient, patchy, worn down to threads. His face is gaunt, eyes sunken, cheeks sharp. You think you see traces of gold leaf clinging to his fingers. Temple gold. Did you bring it back? You ask. The foot. His head tilts slightly.
I was the last to feed it. Feed it. You blink. Excuse me? He steps closer, voice trembling. It doesn't eat. Not like men do. It consumes meaning, thought, names. That's what it takes in. That's what gives it shape. You try to process this. It's a god. He nods, slow and solemn. A fragment. A concept that became too aware of itself. What is it now? He closes his eyes. You feel that familiar cold breath on your skin again, like a sigh exhaled from the floor itself. You point to the crack. It's waking up. No, he says quietly. It was never asleep, only incomplete, like a story with no ending. You feel a chill spread through your body. You glance back at the spiral on the wall, still glowing dimly, and then again at the statue. What happens if someone finishes it? You ask, barely above a whisper. The priest doesn't answer. He doesn't need to, because suddenly, the spiral flares to life again, bright this time, almost painful to look at, and you hear something inside the stone shift. Not a crack, not a crumble, a movement, a shoulder rolling ever so slightly forward, a hand flexing, just once. A reflex, like something testing its limbs. The old priest drops to his knees, hands to his temples. You shouldn't have touched it. I didn't. You start, then stop. Because you did. You held the foot. You wrapped it. You brought it home. You remembered it. And that was enough. Help me, you plead, unsure whether you're talking to the priest or to whatever sits watching you through stone eyelids. The priest looks up, and his face, so dry, so tight with fear, softens, almost with pity. There is no help. Not now. Only, finishing. Your heartbeat is loud in your ears. You feel the world around you start to shift again. Not physically, but perceptually. The chamber seems larger and smaller at once. The statue taller. The air thicker. It's like time itself is slowing down, wrapping around this moment like linen around a corpse. Your limbs feel heavy, like you're being wrapped too. The priest speaks once more, his voice little more than a dry rasp. Once, we tried to name it. That was our first mistake. Names give shape. Shape gives power. So we erased the name. We erased the name, but we couldn't erase the... That's what it lives on. And then, as if cued by his words, the spiral pulses again, and the crack in the statue's chest splits wider. From it comes a thin ribbon of darkness. Not shadow, not absence of light, but negative presence. Like the idea of light has been unmade there. You feel your knees buckle. The priest begins to chant something under his breath. Phraseless, old, more sound than language. A low cyclical murmur that loops back into itself. You realize he's not praying. He's trying to drown something out. Trying to plug his ears with syllables, like a child singing to chase away a nightmare. Your own thoughts start to blur. You can't move, not out of fear, out of weight. Something is being layered onto you. Memory, guilt, meaning. You feel names you've never spoken fill your mouth. 1,000 words for an unnamed god. 1,000 versions of an unfinished story. They want to use your voice, your hands, your memory, to finish it. You take a deep breath and scream, but no sound comes, only a low exhale of dust, from your lungs, or from it. You can't tell anymore. You try to speak again, to scream, to sob, to reject this moment with every cell in your body, but your voice doesn't answer. Something inside you is rewired. The breath you take no longer feels like yours. The thoughts forming behind your eyes drift just out of reach, like dreams dissolving at sunrise. And yet there is no sunrise. Not here. There's only this dim, vibrating half-light, and the spiral pulsing like a second heartbeat behind your ribs. You stumble backward, but the walls ripple. Not physically. More like your mind misreads them, as if it's starting to lose the distinction between solid and imagined, between memory and hallucination. The priest continues his chant. Faster now. Desperate. You shout, this time with sound. Stop it. He does, just like that. He looks up at you with dull, exhausted eyes, the light of the spiral glinting off tear tracks cut through centuries of dust on his cheeks. If I stop, it gets in. He puts a shaking finger to his temple. I kept it out for years, kept it weak, hungry. But now you've remembered it. You've given it form again. He swallows. You fed it. You can't answer. Because he's right. When you found that foot, the one carved from black stone, etched with the name no one remembered, you were curious. You brought it home. You studied it. You named it. Not out loud. But that doesn't matter. Thought is enough. Intention is enough. Now something ancient, something purposefully forgotten, something that should never have existed as more than a half-formed thought, is almost done. The statue twitches again. Just a single jerk of its fingers, like someone cracking their knuckles after a long deep sleep. You flinch, but more than fear, you feel guilt, like you've broken something. A rule, a pact, A silence. You try to think your way out of this. Rituals, spells, logic, science, but everything feels too small, too soft, too young. You are young, compared to this thing. A leaf trying to explain fire. You press your back to the wall, eyes darting between the priest and the figure at the center of the room. Then, a noise. Not from the spiral this time. Not from the walls, from within the statue. A creaking, groaning vibration, like wood warping in slow motion. Except this isn't wood, this is stone. But it moves, and the spiral pulses again, faster now, like a drum speeding into a war rhythm. The priest mutters, "It wants a mouth." You stare. What? He looks up at you, and this time, there's something terrifying in his voice. Hope. It didn't have one. That's why it couldn't finish itself. That's why it needed us. Needed someone to speak the name again. You back away, shaking your head. I didn't speak anything. You thought it. You named it with your curiosity. That's all it takes. He smiles faintly. It's the saddest thing you've ever seen. You brought it home. The chamber shudders. For a moment it feels like an earthquake. Then you realize, it's not the walls, it's you, your body, your perception. The inside of your skull vibrates like a tuning fork. You stagger, gripping the wall. The cloth that once covered the statue is now slithering slowly across the floor, winding its way toward your feet, like it remembers the shape of your body. You kick it away. It doesn't stop. You step away again, and now you realize something else is happening. The spiral is changing. It's no longer just a carved symbol. It's growing. Outward, etched lines creep slowly across the walls like veins. One by one, tiny spirals branch off from the center, fractal and endless. The lines glow faint gold, then red, then dark, as if they're etching themselves into the stone in real time. The priest watches this with tired eyes. I tried to finish it once, years ago. I thought maybe if I shaped it, gave it form, gave it limits, it would stop. He laughs, dry and bitter. I was wrong. I gave it teeth. You look back at the statue. The crack is wider now. You can see something beneath the surface, not flesh, not stone, something between, a liquid that isn't wet, a shadow that isn't cast. Your stomach churns. You try to step forward, to stop it, to do something, but your limbs feel distant, like they belong to someone else. The cloth at your feet wraps loosely around your ankle. You kick it away again, hard, but the room is no longer obeying your sense of reality. Everything here wants one thing, completion, and then you hear it, a sound you'll never forget, a single syllable, not spoken by the priest, not spoken by you, spoken by the room. It comes from nowhere, and everywhere at once, a name, unfamiliar, but somehow yours. You freeze. You don't know what the name is. You don't even remember hearing the syllable clearly, but it hits you like a blow to the chest. Recognition without comprehension. The same way a scent can drag you into a memory you haven't thought of in 20 years. It's your name, but not the one your parents gave you. It's older, truer, carved into the roots of you like a buried signature. It feels like waking up from a dream where you lived a different life, only to realize the dream was the real one, and this has all been the lie. And the moment the room says that name, the statue answers. It groans, low and heavy, like tectonic plates shifting far beneath the earth. The crack along its chest bursts wider, spiderwebbing up its neck, down its arms, across its stomach. Then the eyes, not open, just visible now. Carved, yes, but alive, not glowing, not blinking, just present in a way they weren't before, watching you, only you. You stumble back, hands flailing against the wall, breath coming in shallow gasps. The priest whispers, "It sees you now." You shake your head. No, I didn't do anything. He just watches, then says, almost gently, "Neither did I." That didn't stop it, and for the first time, you realize he's not angry. He's afraid for you, because he knows what happens next. The spiral, still pulsing on the wall behind you, begins to distort. Its smooth lines start twitching, curling inward, rearranging themselves. It's no longer a spiral, it's a map. You see it without knowing how you're seeing it. A temple, yes, but much larger, vast, impossible, staircases that lead nowhere, halls without doors, gardens underground, full of glass trees and bone lanterns. The longer you look at the map, the more real it becomes. Not symbolic, literal, as if the temple you're standing in is just the surface of something so much larger it cannot be seen all at once. A single petal of a vast, sunless bloom, and at its heart, you. That's where the spiral ends, that's where the lines point. Not to the statue, to you. The priest looks ill. You've been chosen. I don't want to be, you shout. No one does. He kneels again, this time not in prayer, but in resignation. His hands tremble as he places them on the floor, forehead touching the stone. You can run, he says, but it will follow. Not with steps, with recognition. What does it want? He doesn't answer, but something else does. A voice, not external, not auditory, internal, like a thought that doesn't belong to you, a thought that comes with weight and permanence. It doesn't speak in words, it speaks in concepts, finality.
shape, witness. It doesn't want to be anymore. It wants to be complete. It wants to be understood. But in order to be understood, it has to be known, and that's what you've done. You opened the door in your mind, in your memory, in your curiosity, and now it's walking through, not with malice, not with vengeance, with inevitability. The statue begins to stand, slowly, heavily. You don't hear stone grind against stone. You hear bones, old bones, not human, not animal, foundational bones, like the bones of a forgotten thought. Its arms lift, its spine uncoils, its hands reach forward, not to crush, not to embrace, but to point at the priest. The man closes his eyes, and in one slow, quiet moment, he disappears. No burst of flame, no flash of light, no drama, just erased, as if he had never been there at all. And you know, in your heart, in that new ancient name still echoing behind your ribs, he was just the last page before yours. You are what comes next. You are not standing anymore. You don't remember falling, but your knees are pressed hard against the floor, your hands splayed against the cool stone. Your breath is loud, too loud, like it's echoing inside a hollow version of yourself. Something is wrong with the way your body fits around your bones. You feel like you're stretching, but nothing is pulling. It's all coming from inside. The name, that name is still there. Not repeating, not spoken, just humming beneath your skin like a memory stuck on the tip of your tongue. It has no syllables, no letters, no origin, but it's yours now. You didn't choose it, you became it, and it's still being written. Behind you, the statue. No, the thing is upright now, towering. Its skin, if it can be called that, is cracked in patterns like dried riverbeds. You'd swear light is leaking from within, but it isn't any color you recognize. Not white, not yellow, something closer to absence. The light of a concept, the echo of a forgotten purpose that never had the chance to be finished. Its head tilts toward you. You feel it. Not pressure, not sound, a kind of awareness, like a librarian watching someone hold a rare untranslatable book and waiting to see if they'll try to read it anyway. It raises one long heavy arm, and you feel it again. Intention, not to harm, not to chase, not even to command, just to complete. You try to crawl backward, fingers scraping stone, but the chamber has changed again. There are no walls now, no door, no ceiling, just space. It stretches endlessly in every direction. You see stars, spirals, symbols, floating geometry, like constellations that forgot they were supposed to stay in the sky, and in front of you, the statue speaks, not aloud, inside, but now for the first time, it doesn't just impress feelings into you, it articulates. The words are cold and clear and ancient, and they pass through your mind like wind through a hollow gourd. You have looked upon the shape, you have named the fragment, you will carry the rest. What rest, you whisper, voice shaking. It responds not with sound, but with reality. Suddenly, you're standing again, only you're not you. You're in a marketplace, but not modern, not even medieval. You're wearing linen, sandals, your hands are brown with dust. There are goats nearby, women selling incense, a man carving shapes into clay. You hear someone call a name, the name. Your heart stops, the vision flickers, and suddenly you're in a library. Stone walls, firelight, scrolls stacked high. A scribe is bent over a long strip of papyrus, copying symbols carefully. You lean over his shoulder. The symbol he draws is the spiral. You blink. Now you're in a dark room, candle lit, surrounded by men in robes chanting. They hold a black foot between them. One of them is you, not like a past life, not metaphorically, literally. You see your own face mouthing the words of the chant, and again, the name. This time, you say it, and the chamber shudders back into place. The vision collapses inward like a dying star, and you're back on the floor, gasping. The statue hasn't moved, but something within you has, because now you understand. The foot you found, the artifact, it was not a relic, it was a seed, a shard of something too old, too large to exist whole, carved away, hidden, buried under the lie of time and lost language. But every so often, someone finds it, picks it up, remembers, and by remembering, they reactivate it, like lighting a fuse. The priest, he was the last one, the last carrier, the last unfinished story, until you. Now it's your turn. The spiral on the wall burns bright, then splinters, not explodes, splinters. The gold lines shatter into thousands of jagged fragments, and where they land, they don't fall, they embed into you, into your arms, your chest, your throat, your skull. It doesn't hurt. It's like becoming hollow and filled all at once, like becoming a vessel made of glass that's finally found the right light to pass through it. You see flashes now, cities built around statues with no names, people whispering to empty rooms, paintings of spirals burned by kings, songs that loop endlessly with no final note. You see them all. You are them all. Your body pulses with knowledge too big for your frame, and you feel the word forming on your tongue again. Not the old name, a new one. Yours, the next iteration, the next chapter, the next forgotten god waiting to be half remembered. You want to scream, but there's no need, because now you are part of the story. You always were. The room breathes with you now, not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. Each time your lungs fill, the chamber expands. When you exhale, the stone contracts, Dust lifts and swirls with your breath, forming lazy spirals that vanish before they land. You are no longer separate from this place. You're part of it. A living node in a sleeping system. Awakened. You blink, and your vision fractures again. You're back in that marketplace, but now you're watching, not living. You float above your body, unseen. People bustle below, oblivious to the flickering shadow moving just behind their eyes. It's always there, a curl of something ancient embedded in the mundane. A child drops a fruit and looks up for a moment, right at you, and for just a heartbeat, he sees you. Then the vision rips away again. You're in a cave. Fire dances across walls, scrawled with markings, spirals, symbols, rough carvings of the statue, the shape. A man kneels in the dark, hands trembling as he presses red pigment into a stone recess. He's alone. He's terrified. He's leaving a warning no one will understand, not for thousands of years, and now you do. It's been you, always you, or people like you, echoes, fragments, names stretched across time like the fading ring of a struck bell, each one thinking they were the first, the last, the only, but the truth, you're part of a chain, one long spiraling chain of witnesses, and now it's your turn to hold the shape before you pass it along. You return to your body. The temple is still, but not quiet. You hear it now, not with your ears but your mind, the hum of the spiral, the rhythm of the structure, the awareness that everything, this chamber, the statue, even the priest before he vanished, was a single sentence in a language too old for mouths to speak, a language of becoming. You are the next syllable. You feel the name again, not imposed, not spoken, but requested. It wants you to claim it now, to finish it, to choose the last piece of the identity it has waited eons to complete. But here's the strange, soft mercy of it all. You don't have to say it aloud. You only have to mean it, and it will become true. You kneel, no longer in fear, but in understanding. The statue watches. You reach out, and your hand doesn't pass over cold stone. It sinks into it like pushing into the surface of a dream, and suddenly, you see everything. You see the truth. The spiral wasn't just a symbol, it's a question, and the statue wasn't a prison, it's a mirror. Every time someone found a piece of it, a foot, a hand, a carved name in a forgotten ruin, they were answering the spiral's question in their own way. They were adding to it, feeding it, not out of evil, out of curiosity, because that's what made the spiral dangerous. Not blood, not power, just attention. The pure innocent attention of a living mind trying to make sense of something. That's all it ever needed. The more you stared, the more it took shape. And now that shape is inside you. You are the vessel, the answer, the next statue, but you can't resist anymore. You don't want to. You feel peace in this now, in the slow realization that your story isn't ending. It's just changing form, becoming still, becoming foundational. Someone, someday will find a piece of you, a fragment, maybe just a name scratched into stone, and they'll wonder, they'll ask, they'll feed it, and the spiral will begin again, not because it's malevolent, but because that's what questions do. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your lids, you see your own silhouette, carved in obsidian, cracked with golden seams, standing in a chamber just like this, waiting. You're no longer breathing in the way you once were. Air moves, yes, but not into lungs. Your body, or the idea of your body, takes in space like a tide takes in moonlight, without effort, without separation. You are no longer entirely you, but you are not lost. You are becoming. The chamber around you dissolves into dimness, not black, not void, but a soft, endless dusk, warm, still, and slow. Time doesn't pass here, it lingers, it folds in on itself like a heavy curtain, sagging gently toward the center of something deeper, and in that stillness, you begin to remember, not your life, not your past, but the others, all of them, the man in the cave, the scribe in the temple, the woman who carved spirals into the underside of a tombstone, the child who whispered the shape while playing in the dirt. None of them knew the full story, none of them needed to, they were part of the spiral, and so are you. Your thoughts drift like feathers through oil. You're no longer curious in the way you once were. It's not that you found the answers, it's that the questions don't carry the same urgency. You see now every scrap of history, every whisper, every what-if that brought you here, was just gravity pulling the shape inward. There is no God here, there never was, only remembrance. The spiral is a memory too big to fit in one mind, too old to stay buried, too strange to be forgotten entirely. So it finds minds, curious ones, tired ones, ones that stay up late asking impossible questions, like yours, and when it finds you, it doesn't scream, it whispers, gently, like a bedtime story older than stars. That's what you are now, a story, one too boring for the gods, too obscure for textbooks, but too persistent to die. Your face, your hands, your words, they'll fade, but not your shape, not your question, not your spiral. In the distance, or maybe within you, something moves. It's slow, colossal, a shape larger than planets, made not of matter, but of context. It's not watching you, it's watching with you, because you are part of it now. You've become one more circle in the loop, one more notch in the pattern. You realize now, you've been falling asleep this whole time. Slowly, gently, not drifting away from awareness, but toward a different kind. The spiral is a lullaby. And you're the next note in the melody. Someone will hum you one day without knowing why. Maybe a scholar in a ruined archive, translating a scrap of text that was meant to be destroyed. Maybe a child with no name, humming a tune while drawing circles in the dirt. Maybe a tired person, late at night, lying in bed, staring at their screen just like you did. And when they find your spiral, they'll remember you, not in detail, not in words, but in feeling. The soft pull, the curious itch, the comfort of something just out of reach but always circling closer, and the spiral will begin again, just as it always has, just as it always will. You exhale. There is no sound, no light, just stillness, just sleep. The kind of sleep that folds time inward, that makes history quiet, that turns fear into a distant rustle in the leaves of your mind. You are no longer the reader, you are no longer the dreamer, you are the page itself, waiting to be read. One day, quietly, lovingly, by someone just like you. Good night.